Hi guys, and welcome to today's video. So in today's video, we're going to be expanding a bit more from the previous video where we're discussing about the SwiftUI's interface builder. But in this video, we're going to go into a bit more detail about SwiftUI's actual layout system and discuss things such as modifiers and views as well. So before we actually get started in the code, I've actually got like a nice little presentation for you guys because I'm kind of like that. And in this presentation, we're basically just going to go through what SwiftUI is and also what modifiers are and how they get applied and how they work with a simple graphic, because I like to treat you guys. So let's just switch over to this graphic now. So when looking at SwiftUI, what is SwiftUI? So basically SwiftUI is a declarative language that allows you to specify how the UI looks. So it's basically like you have a bunch of views which you can think of as components, and you basically bring these components together to basically build a larger set of components as well. So the best way to think about it is like Lego. You literally have a collection or Lego blocks, and you can basically build a big tower from these Lego blocks, but each Lego is its own individual piece. So when we look into this a bit more, how can we actually style views? So in order to style views, we have something called modifiers. So modifiers allow us to change the way a view looks. So if we just use this example of this image that we have here, so we actually have an image and we basically specify the name for the asset. And what we've also done as well is we basically will now render this onto the screen. So in SwiftUI, it will actually render this image onto the screen for you to see. What we could do with this image is we could actually use modifiers to basically change the way this view looks. And when we use modifiers, or actually apply a new style onto it and almost redraw it onto the screen so you can see the new updates. So let's do that now. So what will happen is if we say to this image we want it to be resizable, it'll basically say you can scale the image without affecting the quality. And then what we'll say here is we actually want this image to be scaled to fit, so it will always render within the size of the box that we give it in terms of the size. So you'll see now the image will reduce in size. And then to take this one step further, we could actually reduce the size of this image so that it scales to fit within the bounds that we specify. So in this example, we specified that we want the frame and height to be 50 by 50. So now the image is scaled down to 50 by 50. Okay, sweet. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to go back to the code and just make a few more tweaks. And then you're going to come back to this good old lecture, and then we'll carry on again and discuss a few more things in terms of how we can break down our team role and how we can approach and tackle UI issues. So let's go jump into the code and get started now. Okay, cool. So what we're just going to do is we're just going to basically make a start on basically getting some things together so we can start to work on our actual role for each team. So the first thing we need to do is we need to create a new property called team. And this is going to be a constant. And we're basically going to say that we want the type of this property or this constant to be team. So what's going to happen now is Xcode's actually going to complain to us and say that we're missing an argument team in the preview bit here. So you may be wondering what this actually is. So this here is the preview that you basically see on the right hand side. So another thing to know is that why is this asking for the parameter team? Well, the reason why is because with structs, whenever you have a property or variable or constant, if you don't give it a default value such as something like this, so if you don't give it a default value like so, then it's going to complain and say that you need to initialize it with the type. So this is something that you get for free with structs, and it's something that you need to do in the preview so you can preview the data that you're going to inject into this view. But what we're going to do is we're actually going to basically use something that we created before to basically preview some of the data in this screen. So what I want you to do is if you just hold down Command and then you just click on team and then jump to definition, it's going to take us into the team.swift file. Or alternatively, if you just do Command Shift O, you can actually search for team and it will appear. And then what I want you to do is on the extension, I want to change this to static. So the reason why we need to make this static is so we can access this dummy data without having to create this team as a new instance. We just want to just access the dummy data without having to create a brand new team object. And then what I want to do is, if you just go back to the file, content view, if you just hit on the little dot and then hit on the fix, it will tell you to insert a team. And then in here, what you need to do is you just do team dot dummy data, and then if you just do the brackets and then 0. So what we're saying here is we want to inject the first team in our dummy data into the content view so we can preview it on the right hand side here. Now we've not actually used this yet at all, but we will come back to using this, but for now it should be fine. So now that we've actually done this here, we've actually got another error. And the reason why we have this error is because if you remember, at the main entry point of the app, this is where we create the content view to say this is where we want to basically start the application from. So we just hit here and just scroll up a bit. You want to go to your main file here. Mine's called the project name, so it should have app at the end of it. And then you'll see here that this is actually complaining about how it's missing a parameter team in the call. So similarly to what we did before here, we're just going to literally just copy and paste what we've done here in that file. So we just hit the little dot, hit fix, and then here if we just do team dot dummy data brackets and then 0, and then now if you just do command B and build it, or if we just go to product and then build, then you'll see that we get a build succeeded. All right, cool. So now what we're going to do is we're actually going to take a break from this and we're actually going to go back to our lovely presentation and discuss a bit more about views and how we're actually going to tackle building this view. So let's do that now. So with SwiftUI, I said before that it's literally a collection of views, and the more views you put together, you basically get a component at the end of it and complex UI and all that business. So what is a view? So a view is basically a struct that's drawn onto the screen. And just to give you an example of some things that are views, so you can have things such as images, like I showed you before, and then it would render this onto the screen. You could have text, where it actually draws and renders text onto the screen as well. Alternatively, you could have a button as well, and obviously the button will render onto the screen, and you have the text sign in and the action sign up. So whenever the button gets tapped, it'll execute the sign up function. But what we want to do is we want to basically look at the view that we're going to be building, and we want to basically see what is the best way to tackle our view. So when I'm building UI, what I like to do is I like to spend some time to look at the UI and break it down before injecting any data. So I'll basically build it really like in a static way where there's nothing coming from an API or a database, and just get it looking right. So if we look at our view here, we actually have our badge, we have our team name and all the information, and we have our button on the right hand side. So the first thing we need to do is we need to put all this content in some kind of container. So the first thing we're going to put it inside of, if you look on our right, is a VStack. So what is a VStack? So a VStack basically allows us to lay out views vertically, and you'll see a representation of this in a minute. So what we want to put in our VStack next is a HStack, because if you look at the way our views are laid out, we have our badge here, we have our information on the left hand side, and we have our button on the right hand side as well. So we need to lay out our views horizontally. So within our HStack, the first thing we're going to add is an image to represent our image of the football team, the badge. Then the next thing that we need to add in is another VStack, because if you look at our text for Arsenal, it's actually laid in a column. So we want our content to be vertical. So within our VStack, you'll see that there's a lot of text. So logically, it makes sense to use some texts, and you can see the text, like I said before. Then the next thing we need to use is a component that you've probably not come across yet, which is another one similar to HStack and VStack, something new, spacer. So the reason why space is really important is because in between the text and the button, we need to basically add some space so it fills up the entire screen. Without this spacer, the cell will shrink. And then finally at the end, we're going to add a button, and the button is just going to basically be a button that when you tap it, it will change the icon and do some other pieces of logic as well. So as you can see, if you look at the left, you look at the right hand side, I'm hoping that you can start to see how we've broken down our view from smaller components and then combine them to make one bigger, larger component. And when you're tackling UI, you always want to tackle it like this because it's going to make your life a lot easier. So that's the end of this video today. What we'll do in the next video is we'll actually put into practice what we've learned in this video and actually build our actual components in SwiftUI programmatically. As always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And also as well, if you need to, rewatch this video so you can basically grasp some of the concepts for the next video as well. As always, I'll see you guys in a bit. Deuces.